All right, let's dive right in. In this explainer, we're launching a hard-hitting historical investigation into one of the most heavily influential yet overlooked documents ever recovered from the ancient world. We're looking at a 4,000-year-old piece of Mesopotamian literature known as Enlil in the E-kur. Now, this was discovered in fragments back in the early 20th century and fully translated by 1928. But let me tell you, this Sumerian hymn isn't just some dusty, irrelevant relic. It's actually a highly strategic, carefully constructed piece of writing that gives us a truly fascinating window into power, religion, and honestly, the very origins of literature itself.
So here is the central mystery of our investigation today. What if a 4,000-year-old poem laid the groundwork for modern religious texts? Just think about that for a second. As we trace the evidence, we're going to see exactly how a document that was originally written just to praise a Sumerian sky god and his towering temple didn't just fade into the desert sands. Instead, its specific phrasing, its structural brilliance, and its core theological concepts literally echoed across millennia. Ultimately, this text shaped the literature of future generations, and that includes some of the most famous passages in the Bible.
Section 1. The Background Briefing. Profiling the God and the Temple.
Okay, let's dive into this by laying out the basic facts of our case. Before we can really analyze the motives behind this ancient text, we need a briefing on the primary subjects of the hymn, right? Namely, the physical location where the worship took place and the god being worshipped. Our primary location here is the E-kur. This was an incredibly opulent temple, a massive ziggurat, located in the holy city of Nippur in ancient Sumer. Now, the text refers to this temple complex as the Dur and Ki, and that translates to the bond or the meeting place between heaven and earth. So, to the people of Mesopotamia, this grand step tower wasn't just a big building. It was an awe-inspiring, literal bridge to the divine. It completely dominated the desert landscape, meant to elevate the souls of absolutely anyone who approached it.
And here is our dossier on the deity actually residing in that temple, Enlil. Originally, he was the Sumerian god of the air and the son of Anu, the lord of the heavens. But Enlil eventually rose the ranks to become the supreme king of the Mesopotamian pantheon. He was the all-powerful keeper of the tablets of destiny, literally holding the fates of both gods and humans in his hands. As the creator and the preserver of universal order, his worship spanned an incredible length of time. We're talking from roughly 2900 BCE all the way to 141 BCE. That is some serious staying power.
To really grasp the immense influence of Enlil's cult, we have to look at the historical timeline. Throughout the early dynastic period, the Akkadian period, and right into the Earth III period, the city of Nippur and the E-kur temple were the absolute, ultimate centers of power. Monarch after monarch made it a massive priority to fund building, renovation, and restoration projects there. But as any good investigator knows, when you see vast sums of wealth being poured into a single location over centuries, we have to ask the obvious question: what was the political return on that investment?
Section 2. Follow the power. Royal propaganda and the E-kur kings. You see, religion and state were deeply intertwined in the ancient world. And by looking closely at the E-kur kings, we can uncover the clear political motives driving the extreme popularity of this specific hymn. Let's examine the political strategy of the E-kur dynasty, specifically kings Ur-Nammu and his son Shulgi, who ruled right around 2100 BCE. They claim that their absolute authority to rule came directly from Enlil. In fact, scholars believe this poem actually dates to Shulgi's reign. By commissioning and performing this hymn at grand public festivals, the kings were essentially weaponizing temple literature as political propaganda. They were publicly reinforcing to everyone that the supreme god backed their administration.
If you want hard evidence of this political agenda, look no further than lines 84 through 92 of the translated text. The poem explicitly states, "Enlil, if you look upon the shepherd favorably, even the most distant foreign countries submit to him. He will then cause enormous incomes and heavy tributes to reach the treasury." I mean, wow, this is just a brilliant piece of messaging. It directly links obedience to the god with military success, foreign submission, and massive economic wealth flowing directly into the royal coffers. And this brilliantly illustrates how deep the indoctrination went. Because this text wasn't just sung at festivals, it was mandated as part of the advanced curriculum in the Eduba, which was the ancient Mesopotamian scribal school. Elite students, in their final years of formal education, were required to copy and study this exact text. By embedding this royal propaganda directly into the educational system, the rulers ensured that the next generation of bureaucrats and administrators thoroughly internalized the idea that the king's power was divinely ordained.
Section 3. Analyzing the textual evidence.
decoding the hymn's structure. Now, let's treat the text itself like a declassified primary source document. How exactly did the author structure this hymn to be so psychologically and emotionally effective for its audience? Well, as noted by scholar Jeremy Black, the structural brilliance of the hymn lies in its alternating perspectives. The poet actually shifts back and forth between third-person descriptions of the temple's majesty and direct, intimate addresses to the deity. It shifts the audience from feeling the sense of overwhelming, distant awe regarding Enlil's faithfulness and righteousness right into deeply personal prayers and supplications. This dual structure expertly manipulated the emotions of the festival-goers. It made the divine presence feel both infinitely powerful but also immediately present.
In one of the most extraordinary passages of the entire text, specifically lines 109 to 130, the poet attempts to imagine the world without Enlil. The text details how, without him, no cities would be built, no animals would propagate, and no crops would ever grow. It is a masterful piece of witness testimony, where the author concludes that, quite simply, without Enlil, nothing at all would exist. It completely cemented the idea that the people's very survival depended entirely on this deity, and by extension, of course, the kings he supported.
Section 4. The Biblical Legacy. Discovering the Literary Ancestor. So, we've established how this text was used for political control and educational curriculum in Sumer. But texts copied by elite scribes, they travel, right? And they heavily influence neighboring and future cultures. When scholars analyze Enlil in the E-kur alongside later religious texts, they find some truly striking similarities. Now, we are just reporting the scholarly consensus here, but the connections are really hard to ignore. The hymn's portrayal of a singular, all-powerful creator god and its use of specific titles, like calling Enlil the Prince of Heaven in line 100, establish a clear literary ancestry. Scholars note that the themes, the structure, and the epithets found in the Sumerian curriculum heavily influenced much later biblical books, and that includes parts of Isaiah, the Gospels, and even the Book of Revelation. Now, what's really interesting here is the direct textual comparison. Take a look at this. On the left, in line 93 of our 4,000-year-old Sumerian hymn, Enlil is praised as the faithful shepherd of the teeming multitudes. And on the right, we have one of the most famous lines in all of Western literature. From the biblical Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd." For literary historians, this is the smoking gun. It shows exactly how metaphors crafted to legitimize Sumerian kingship were adapted and carried forward across millennia into entirely new religious contexts. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to close our case file today. If a 4,000-year-old piece of royal propaganda, originally designed to drive tribute to a Sumerian king, contains the literary DNA that ultimately shaped the Psalms, well, how much of human literature is built on borrowed words? It's a fascinating reminder that absolutely nothing is created in a vacuum. And the words we use to describe the world, or even the divine today, they might just be the distant echoes of an ancient scribe sitting in the shadow of the E-kur.